What are you doing here? This is my mind.
You brought me here.
Leave now!
Greetings, fellow Trekkies! Get ready to jump into the fascinating world of Star Trek as we go on board a journey to discover the family history of Mr. Spock, one of the show's most recognizable characters ever. Although Spock is unquestionably one of the most important characters in the Star Trek world, there are other iconic figures from the same family. Yes, his family members are also essential to the franchise that the fans have grown to know over time. Spock made his Star Trek debut in the original series, and since then has been deeply integrated into the Star Trek storyline. In the course of the show, more details about Spock's family background were revealed. His family is a mix of human sentiment and Vulcan reason, as seen from his love for his human mother, Amanda Grayson, to the well-known Vulcan father, Sarek. In this video, we'll look into Spock's pedigree and try to find out about a few of his relatives, including some lesser-known people. Prepare yourself to be amazed. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Captain James Kirk.
Sarek, father. Sarek, who hailed from Vulcan, was both Spock's biological father and Michael Burnham's foster father, the latter being the Starfleet mutineer. He had also been married to an Earthling named Amanda Grayson, who was Spock's mother. Sarek devoted his life to the service of the community, holding roles such as their ambassador and delegate to the Federation Council. Sarek was born in 2165 as the son of Skan. He received his early education under the guidance of his father. His firstborn, Sybok, came into the world out of wedlock with a Vulcan princess later in his life while serving as an ambassador on Earth. Sarek fell in love with a human named Amanda Grayson in the late 2220s. They tied the knot, and 3 years into their marriage, in 2230, Amanda gave birth to their second son, Spock, in the city of Shikar. When Michael Burnham's human parents were killed by Klingons, Sarek took her under his wing and raised her on Vulcan. In 2245, she enrolled in the Vulcan Learning Center and went on to become the first human to attend the Vulcan Science Academy. Burnham suffered severe injuries during an attack at the Learning Center from logic extremists. Sarek used a mind meld to save her life, implanting a portion of his essence in her that allowed for an interplanetary connection. After Burnham graduated, Sarek had to choose between her and Spock for a position in the Vulcan Expeditionary Group, which was not an easy decision. Finally, he turned towards Spock, but he made sure Burnham got her chance, setting her up to work on the USS Shenzhou under Captain Philippa Georgiou. But Sarek regretted his decision when Spock chose to attend Starfleet Academy instead of going to the Vulcan Science Academy, which was Sarek's original plan. This deviance from Sarek's expectations for his kid caused tension between them, which in turn caused their relationship to deteriorate in 2250. They distanced themselves from each other for several years after that. Ambassador Sarek first appeared in the Star Trek The Original Series episode, Journey to Babel, accompanied by his wife Amanda. Like his half-human son, Sarek was a strong-willed person who frequently turned to unyielding reasoning while pursuing diplomatic goals, but this method didn't always transfer into being a model father. In subsequent appearances, the ambassador's persistent intransigence emerged as one of his distinguishing characteristics. Since Sarek is a Vulcan, he has the same natural abilities as members of his race. Since their home planet has a greater gravity than Earth, they're generally shown as being around 3 times stronger than humans. This feature also allows them to move faster. Moreover, because of their adaptation to the desert-like habitat, Vulcans may survive for lengthy periods without drinking, often for more than a few days. Sarek himself may go up to 2 weeks without needing sleep. In addition, Sarek shares the ability of telepathy with many other Vulcans.
Captain, Ambassador Sarek and his wife are my parents.
Amanda Grayson, biological mother. Born somewhere in the early 23rd century, Amanda Grayson was purportedly related to renowned writer Sir Arthur Conan Doyle through her ancestry. Her family has a hereditary tendency toward dyslexia. In the late 2220s, Amanda crossed paths with Sarek, the Vulcan ambassador to Earth, and they found themselves falling deeply in love. After they were married, Amanda finally moved to Vulcan to live with Sarek. Their son Spock came into the world in 2230, while they resided in the city of Shikar. Some years later, following the tragic loss of Michael Burnham's parents, Amanda and Sarek welcomed her into the family. Amanda repressed her own emotions while Sarek persisted in his want for Spock to be nurtured in the conventional Vulcan way, free from overt emotional expression. Thinking back on the incident, Amanda admitted to giving Burnham the emotional comfort and support that she was unable to freely give Spock. When Amanda discovered that Spock had inherited her family's dyslexia, she resolved to help him overcome his scholastic issues, because the Vulcan Academic Center's methods were not working. Amanda was instrumental in assisting her son with his re-education, some 20 years after Spock's Faltorpan rejoining and resurrection on the Genesis planet. She worked very hard to facilitate Spock's reconnection with his human roots.
I assure you, Ambassador, everything will be ready before the conference begins.
My husband and I have every confidence in you, Captain.
Parin, stepmother. Parin was a 24th century woman of human ancestry, who was Ambassador Sarek's last wife. Despite her husband's Vulcan demeanor, she adored Sarek and was able to see his love for her even when he failed to express it freely. Parin tracked Sarek's progressive lack of emotional control in the 2360s, noting symptoms including his inability to meditate. She didn't realize anything was wrong at first because the advancement was so gradual, even though she finally discovered it was Bendy syndrome. Knowing that Sarek's personal aide was quietly helping him to stay in line, Parin consented to keep the information private, realizing the importance of the Lagaran conference for his professional status. She thought Sarek could carry out this last task honorably. Knowing that Sarek was a huge fan of Captain Jean-Luc Picard's career, Parin was happy to meet Picard when they traveled with Sarek aboard the USS Enterprise D in 2366. She agreed to invite Sarek to a memorial performance, even though she had contributed to his seclusion. But when she saw Sarek's inner turmoil throughout the performance, her concern increased, and she hurried to leave with him. Parin first dismissed Picard's fears about Sarek's condition, but later on, when Sarek overheard their talk, he told Sarek the truth. The idea that a mind meld may enable Sarek to accomplish his objective was then put out by Picard to her, and it worked. Parin was on the Enterprise D when Captain Picard traveled to Vulcan before Sarek's death in order to investigate Spock's suspected links to Romulus. She first confided in Sarek about Spock's alleged lack of allegiance, his refusal to say goodbye to his father, and his loud disagreement with Sarek's viewpoints during the Federation-Cardassian War conversation severely distressed her. She was pretty irritated and annoyed by these acts.
By making you face your pain and draw strength from it.
Sybok. Sybok is the older half-brother of Spock. He is the oldest son of Vulcan diplomat Sarek and a Vulcan princess, Tyria, born in the first half of the 23rd century. As the secondary antagonist in the 1989 movie Star Trek V: The Final Frontier, this character had a significant part to perform. Sarek and Tyria married in 2224, and Sybok was born during a single intimate meeting before Tyria became High Master of Gol, and later left Sarek, resulting in the annulment of their wedding. Tyria kept Sybok's birth, who was then known as Shiev, from Sarek. She raised him with an unconventional Vulcan worldview, encouraging him to embrace rather than suppress his feelings. She also instilled in him the concept of Shakari, a legendary location in Vulcan mythology that's said to be home to God. Sybok had a rebellious tendency growing up in Sarek and Amanda's home with his half-brother Spock. Even with his brilliance, he sought out forbidden experiences and defied Vulcan conventions, whereas Spock had a more analytical stance. Sybok valued emotion and passion. After an event in which he tried to take his mother's Katra from the Hall of Ancient Thought, High Master Tisai formally exiled Sybok from Vulcan. Over 10 years passed during exile, during which Spock remained unsure of Sybok's whereabouts. Before 2259, Sybok had married Captain Angel, a pirate, and went under the nicknames of Arius. After being taken prisoner by the El Keshtan Katil, he was placed in the An-Keshtan Katil Rehabilitation Facility. Sybok was detained until his ultimate escape or release from detention, despite Angel's efforts to get his freedom. Apart from the usual Vulcan powers, Sybok uses his psychic powers to make victims repeat their worst experiences before intervening to assist them in letting go of the suffering they retain. Michael Burnham. Michael's parents were Mike and Gabriel Burnham, two humans. After a Klingon attack on her parents' place of employment left her orphaned as a young girl, Sarek and Amanda Grayson took her in and nurtured her as their own. Michael was educated at a Vulcan learning center as a child, but when radicals bombed the facility in an effort to kill her, her life abruptly changed. She was saved by Sarek's intervention in the form of a mind meld, which left them with an enduring mental bond that cut over time and space. Michael defied all odds to become the first human graduate of the Vulcan Learning Center and Vulcan Science Academy. At Sarek's insistence, she enlisted in Starfleet and was placed aboard the USS Shenzhou, initially under Captain Philippa Georgiou. She showed her exceptional talent and leadership abilities until she became the first officer. But during a battle with the Klingons, her beliefs drove her to act controversially, even trying to mutiny against Georgiou. Despite the terrible repercussions of her actions, Michael was eventually instrumental in ending the Klingon Federation conflict, and as a result, she was given another opportunity when she was posted as a specialist aboard the USS Discovery. During her time aboard Discovery, Michael had to handle the Mirror Universe, as well as the real identity of Gabriel Lorca, just to mention a few challenges. Michael passed through the test of fire, and her heroism and accomplishments bagged her a Starfleet Medal of Honor, a pardon by the Federation president, and her rank back. She was a multifaceted person with a very high IQ, having mastered space physics, being extremely good in hand-to-hand combat, and being a very competent leader. T'Pring. Born in 2230 on Vulcan to parents Yvette and T'Pril, T'Pring was engaged to Spock as a young kid. T'Pring worked in Ankeshtan Katil, the Vulcan rehabilitation colony, in the 2250s as an administrator and therapy specialist. As an inmate's unbridled emotion drove them to engage in illegal activity, her job was to help them return to the road of reason. During Spock's return to Vulcan in 2259, he and T'Pring were officially engaged. However, their relationship was tested when Spock emphasized his duty as a Starfleet officer over spending time with her, causing her anger. T'Pring offered a Vulcan soul-sharing ceremony in order to deepen their understanding, which mistakenly resulted in a body switch. Forced to take on one another's forms until they could revert, they used the experience to learn more about each other. The uncertainty of their engagement grew insurmountable, as Spock transformed into a complete human during a mission just before their family dinner. Apart from all the hurdles, Spock kept this a secret from T'Pring, adding to the growing enmity between them. Ultimately, T'Pring suggested they stop their relationship after she got hurt that Spock did not share his secret with her. Zarabeth. Zarabeth is a humanoid from Sarpedon and appears in the Star Trek The Original Series episode, All Our Yesterdays. She faced deportation to her planet's ice age via a time machine called the Atavachron, as a result of her family's involvement in a scheme to depose Zor Khan, the governing tyrant. The keeper of the Atavachron, Atoz, sent Dr. Leonard McCoy and Spock from the USS Enterprise to this era in 2269. After Spock arrived, he started to feel the same intense feelings that Vulcans felt at the time, and Zarabeth and Spock finally fell in love. Following a short liaison during which their son Zar was conceived, Spock and McCoy found the wormhole that allowed them to travel back in time. Zar was born a few months after Spock and McCoy left, and Zarabeth started raising her son by herself. Zarabeth trained her kid to hunt and to be civilized despite the caveman-like living conditions they shared. Regretfully, Zarabeth fell into a chasm and passed away 17 years after Spock's departure. Zar kept her remains in ice until his father arrived 3 years later and used his phaser to vaporize her since she requested to be cremated. Zar. Around 2762 BC on Sarpedon, Zar, the son of Spock and Zarabeth, was born. Zar had mixed ancestry. He was 1/4 Vulcan, yet he looked Vulcanoid, even down to the gray eyes. Interestingly, he also had enhanced cerebral capacities and psychic talents, which included the capacity for precognition. As Zar got older and began to hunt for sustenance, he defied Vulcan norms that his people frowned upon. During his hunts, he gained the unusual power to project his emotions onto animals, immobilizing them and allowing him to seize his prey. However, on one fatal day in 2744 BC, Zar had an unexpected and severe sensation of illness and sadness, causing him to pass out. Zar was awakened by vivid and upsetting visions of his mother's death. He rushed back to her, only to find that she had already passed away, after accidentally falling into a deep chasm. Because there was a shortage of firewood, Zar could not fulfill Zarabeth's wish to be cremated. Instead, he preserved her body in ice to maintain her dignity and respect the memory of his deceased mother. Zar spent the next 7 years alone on Sarpedon, with little interaction with anyone. Until around 2737 BC, Zar was on a hunting trip when he noticed 3 people approaching him. He used his telepathic talents to try and neutralize them, not realizing that one of them was also a telepath. Zar was eventually apprehended by the gang, only to learn that the group consists of his father Spock, joined by Captain James T. Kirk, and Dr. Leonard McCoy. They had gone through the Guardian of Forever to give Zar an opportunity to join them in the 23rd century, which he joyfully accepted. Skan, grandfather. Living through the 21st to 23rd centuries, Skan, or full name Sechun Sagai Skan, was a Vulcan with profound historical ties. He was acknowledged as Solkar's son, Sarek's father, and Spock and Sybok's paternal grandfather. Even though the precise date of his birth is unknown, the fact that he was known to exist in both the regular and mirror universes suggests that he was alive in 2063. Since Skan's existence was characterized by tradition, he was engaged to Temelis in his childhood, as is customary on Vulcan. However, their relationship was strained by Skan's pacifist convictions, which conflicted with Temelis' military career and the Vulcan High Command. Their marriage was strained and ended with Temelis' death during a military conflict against the Andorian Empire. After his wife died, Skan found consolation in the serenity of Vulcan civilization. He became the first Vulcan to translate Serak's teachings into English, demonstrating his thorough comprehension and devotion to peaceful living. Skan eventually formed a relationship with Tirama, with whom he had a son named Sarek before 2165. Their family became even larger when they had another son, Celic, whose tale we'll get to shortly. Solkar, great-grandfather. The next person on our list is Skan's father, Solkar, who lived at about the same period as his son. Solkar's father worked in astrophysics and biology, and Solkar continued the family heritage by joining the prestigious Vulcan Science Academy. Solkar assumed the command of the survey ship Tiplana Hath at the age of 60. The spacecraft discovered a human warp signal in the Solkar system in 2063 while on a routine mission. Following procedure, Solkar ordered the Tiplana Hath to conduct an investigation. They arrived at Earth's colony in Montana, the site of the historic Phoenix spacecraft's launch. While over there, Solkar met with Zephram Cochrane, the pioneer of warp technology, as he stepped onto Earth's surface, marking the beginning of the first human-Vulcan encounter. The handshake formed a mental tie between Solkar and Cochrane that seemed to last forever. In the years that followed, Solkar played an essential role as Vulcan's first ambassador to Earth, developing diplomatic ties between the two species for the very first time. It was with great sadness that T'Pau announced the death of Solkar one day in the tragic year 2250. Following his death, the only surviving members of Solkar's family were his grandson Sarek and his two great-grandchildren, Spock and Sybok. The fact that the tragedy happened the day before the 187th anniversary of the historic first contact between humans and Vulcans emphasizes how much Solkar's life and legacy have meant.
My name is Celic.
Celic, disguised Spock. During his time travel through the Guardian of Forever, Spock took up the alias of Celic to avoid his premature death at the hands of a Lematia, a large carnivorous animal native to the planet Vulcan. Under the guise of Sarek's distant cousin, Spock infiltrated his own family as Celic. He introduced himself as the son of Sasek and T'Pel. However, it's not revealed whether those names truly belong to any relatives of theirs or not. His made-up story for the purpose of the visit described as a trip to the family shrine to honor their forefathers. Unaware of the deception, Sarek extended hospitality to Celic by inviting him to stay with them while he traveled. Celic moved quickly to protect Spock and his cherished pet Selat, Aichaya, from a wild Lematya that posed a deadly threat in the untamed Elengan Mountains, thus succeeding his mission. Marvelous verdict. We have now reached the end of our explanation of Spock's family tree. Every character mentioned in this video has left their mark on the franchise's history in some way. As we've progressed through their origins and personal experiences, we've gained a greater understanding of the tight-knit linkages that run throughout the Star Trek saga. Through their ups and downs, it's been eye-opening to observe how themes like love and sacrifice reverberate throughout the universe. Whether you're a die-hard Trekkie or just casually interested about the Star Trek world, we hope this deep dive has provided you with some interesting new insights on the amazing characters revolving around Spock, an absolute legend in the Star Trek saga. Which member of Spock's family tree is your favorite and why? Let us know in the comments below. If you like this video, hit that like button and share it with everyone you know. Until next time, live long and prosper, friends.